got 3 minutes, roughly? So out the gym and to the right.
They got their tax bill.
Testing. Can y'all hear me okay with this? Hello? Is that okay? How's that? Is that better? Is that working at all? How's that? Sorry about that. Yes, we're gonna have to shut that door. Yeah, it's very boomy, this thing, and I have to talk directly into it so that I can do that. Okay. Hi, my name is Andy Esquivel. I'm the Community Engagement Coordinator for the City of Smithville. And welcome to tonight's presentation on property taxes with Fawn Collins. I'm just here to talk to you all about a few quick procedures. It's not a very large group, but we want to make sure that everyone can hear the questions. Fawn's going to do a presentation, and there will be a question and answer session. And in order to do that, over on your left, to my right, we do have another PA system with a microphone on it. That one is already turned on. If you have a question, we ask that you please go to that microphone and ask so that everyone can hear you, and so that the microphone in the back of the room also picks up what your question is for the audience that we're going to be live streaming this for. Is everybody okay with that? Okay.
Thank you, Andy, for laying down the procedures here, or the process. If you could also let me know about 5:30, because I want to allow enough time for some questions. Okay, or 6:30. Okay, I'm sorry. Yes, 6:30. Anyway, well, welcome to tonight's Hot Topics. I feel like I'm doing that in my. But anyway, welcome to the tonight's Hot Topics. It's put on by the City of Smithville, and in conjunction with the Smithville Chamber of Commerce. Just a little bit introduction. I am Fawn Collins. I am the Chief Appraiser for Bastrop Central Appraisal District. I have been with the Appraisal District since 2015. I have been your Chief Appraiser since 2019. I am a proud owner, and I like to claim my homestead on Easley Road, south of Upton, south of the Young Schoolhouse Church. So I do have a Smithville zip code. So I like to claim that I am a Smithvillian. I don't know if that's how you guys say it, but anyway. My husband and I purchased a property there in 2019, and we're on 5 acres. No, I don't have ag, but I do have cattle. I let my neighbor's cows come over onto my property, and I love to sit on my porch and drink coffee and watch those babies. So the hot topic Andy asked me to talk about today was on white property tax. And I gave a little handout with some bullet points for you to have so that maybe they will refresh your memory or on some of the topics I'm going to talk about here, okay? So why do we have property tax? Well, that's because it's the largest source of money local governments use to pay for schools, roads, police, fire protection, and many other services. Now, the Texas Constitution, Article 89B, requires that all real and tangible personal property be taxed in proportion to its value. Also, the Texas law establishes the processes that the appraisal district must follow to determine value. And it also sets the process that schools must use. This is the property tax code. Okay, this is the property tax code. This is the book that the appraisal district has to follow. When the appraisal district was formed back in the 1980s, this was about 10 pages. It's now this thick. And it's encumbersome. And our great legislative body right now is meeting right now. And there's over, I think I counted, there's over 500 bills that relate to property tax that they're looking at right now. Okay? And every time they make a change, it changes the rules and how we do business in the appraisal district. So I think it's important to understand who does what with property tax, okay? So the appraisal district, we are a political subdivision of the state of Texas. We are not governed by the county. The county judge has no authority over the appraisal district. Neither does the school or the city or any other taxing authority. It's actually a Class C misdemeanor if the county judge, a commissioner, a school board member, a mayor, or any of their staff contact a member of the appraisal district to discuss value and how value should be done. And we take that very serious. So the primary function is for the appraisal district is to appraise the property, to appraise a value of the property every year according to the laws of Texas, and we also administer special valuation applications and exemptions. The board of directors is who governs the appraisal district, and the board of directors is elected by the entities. So the county, the school district, and the cities all have an opportunity to elect who the board members are. And the board members' function is to hire me, to adopt a budget, and to approve contracts. That's all they do. They have no authority on value. They can't discuss value at all, the board of directors. The Appraisal Review Board. Some of you might know what the Appraisal Review Board is. Some of you might have had the opportunity to present a case before the Appraisal Review Board. So the Appraisal Review Board is local citizens that hear disagreements between the property owners and the appraisal district. Members of the Appraisal Review Board are appointed by a local administrative judge. The local administrative district judge appoints that citizen. The appraisal district does not. Our board of directors does not. We're not allowed to have communication with the Appraisal Review Board. And sometimes there's a misconception because they hold their hearings in our building, right? So it gets confusing. Well, if you don't have anything to do with them, why are they meeting in your building? Well, if we were to have them meet somewhere else, we're going to have to pay rent somewhere else for them to meet. We're going to have computer equipment. We're going to have everything available for them to meet at a different location. Right now we have space, but we are slowly running out of space, and within a couple of years they might have to meet off-site. Part of us in the appraisal district We're for that because we want to definitely show the property owners that there is a separation. We do not have control, authority, or are a part of the appraisal review board. Taxing jurisdictions. What is a taxing jurisdiction? Sometimes they call it taxing jurisdiction, taxing entities, taxing units. The city, the schools, the county. Let's see, if you're in an ESD, an Emergency Service District 1 or 2, those are all taxing jurisdictions. And then we have our tax assessor collector, and that's the person that is contracted to collect the taxes, generate the tax bill. And your current tax assessor collector is the elected official Ellen Owens. So, one of the questions we get asked frequently is, well, how do you value property? How do you even begin to value property for tax purposes? Well, single-family residential properties, well, first of all, let's start off with the handout. It's a mass appraisal, okay? We appraise 70,000 properties every year. We don't have the staff, nor do we have the budget to look at every 70,000 pieces of property every year for value, okay? So in mass appraisal, it's defined by the Appraisal Foundation, and it's the process of valuing a universe of properties as of a given date using standard methodology, employing common data, and allowing for statistical testing. Well, market value, the Texas Property Tax Code, right in this book, it states that all property is to be valued at market value as of January 1 of each year, unless the property qualifies for a special valuation. When we hear special valuation, we're talking about agriculture. A lot of people call agriculture an exemption. It's not an exemption, it's a special value, but we understand when people say, I want an ag exemption, we understand what they're talking about. They want a special value, okay, that's not related to market. So for single-family residences, it's based on the market. It's based on what properties are selling for. We acquire all the sales that have happened in Bastrop County. We analyze that data and we use it to establish value. Now here's the thing, when you do things in mass, you're going to have some values that are overvalued, some properties that are overvalued. You're going to have some properties that are in the middle, and you're going to have some properties that are undervalued. So do you think anybody that's undervalued is going to protest? No, we don't see those. Our goal is to try and make sure that that statistical analysis, where you have some highs and some medians and some lows, we want that to be as evenly spread as we can, but it doesn't happen, okay? Like I said, it's mass appraisal. There's going to be something unique about a property that we don't know. So we probably could overvalue that. And as a property owner, your right is to protest that. File a protest. We want to have a conversation with you about your property. Let's talk about it. Let's see what that value needs to be. And then individuals are going to say, but we have to do this every year. Every year's a new year. That's every year's a new value year. Now, there's part of the tax code that says that you can reappraise every 3 years, but if we reappraise every 3 years according to what the market is doing, we would fail the studies where we are studied. We would fail those studies, and school districts would lose funding because we're not appraising at market value. So because we're in an active market area, even though this year, 2022, kind of stabled out, that we're still kind of an active market, we value every year. So one of the misconceptions is that there is no limitation on the amount of increase to market, that you can't increase my property more than 10%. Everyone says that. Well, you can't do that. The law says you can't increase my property by 10%. That is true if you have a qualified homestead. If you're a commercial property or you own rental property, rental houses, you're set. I mean, you have to follow the market. But just a little side note on that, House Bill 2 was engrossed, has made it to the Senate. It will probably also make it through the Senate. It will probably make it out to the vote of the people. And that's going to change that all real property will have a limitation on appraised value increases at 5%. So we'll see if it goes through. Now, what you have to understand, that might not affect us, but that's going to affect your school districts, that's going to affect your counties and your cities in the value that they actually use in calculating their budget. But that's their thing, right? Our thing is whatever, if it happens, it happens. We'll not enforce it, but we'll implement it. Yeah, we'll get it in our system so it calculates. Anyway, that made it to the Senate last Monday, and it's kind of set there right now. So we're watching that one. So your limitation, your 10% limitation is on a homestead. And what you need to understand that on the 10%, it's 10% of the homestead value plus any new value that has not been on the tax roll. Okay? So our appraisers are out there and they haven't been to that property for 6 years. They pick up a garage. They add it to the tax roll. That's new value. That's new value for this year. It doesn't matter what year it's never been on. Even though it might have been on the property, it's never been taxed. So it counts as new value. So that gets calculated into the calculation. We do revalue every year. It's really important to make sure you have your homestead exemption. If you don't, please file your homestead exemption. If you are of the age that is of the golden years of being over 65, congratulations, apply for your over 65, okay? The city of Smithville adopted a freeze, an over 65 freeze. You need to apply for that. So not only do you get money off of your value, after 2 years of being a qualified over 65, the lower of the tax dollars are frozen for the city. Okay? The school district already freezes. Okay? But it takes 2 years because you're going to get the lower of those two. You don't get the first year you apply. So hopefully the second year is a little lower. So you'll freeze even lower. And here's another misconception. It's not the value that freezes, it's the tax dollars. And we all call it a freeze, and it's a ceiling. It means that your taxes won't go above that, but it can be below it, okay? And if it goes above it, it might be because you added something new. And it might not be new to you, but it's new to the roll, okay? So our physical inspections are conducted at least once every 6 years. Our goal is to inspect once every 3 years. And no, we do not use drones. That would be a huge liability to the county, or to the appraisal district, okay? The insurance on those, and I know they would be shot down. So there's no sense in having those. But we do use airplanes. We do fly the county every other year. And they're able to fly at a resolution that we can measure within 1 to 2 inches. We can actually walk around the house with these aerial photography. Now, it's your right as a property owner that we don't have to have access to your property. But it's our right as appraisal district to make sure that we have listed on the property for the tax rolls so that you are properly taxed. Because if we don't have your structures, your neighbor's paying your taxes. So, who checks the appraisal district? This is important. Not only do you guys get to, the first person that gets to check us is the property owners, you, by filing your protests. By you filing your protests, you're checking our work. You're making sure our work is good, okay? But that's not the only people that get to check us. The Property Tax Assistance Division checks our values every 2 years. We just completed a valuation study for 2022. 2022 was a hard year with market values, right? You guys, some people in the area saw over 50% increase in value on market. You had a homestead cap that you might not have gotten up to the market, but that's what market increased. We had a study on all school districts, and we passed all those school districts, and the state said we were still 4% below market. And I'm sitting there going, how could we have gone any more? Because we really held back as much as we could in 22. But they study that for the school districts because they want to know. The reason they study the schools is how much locals are paying and how much money they get to fund. And the state doesn't want to fund, right? So they're going to do a study to make sure that the district is appraising at market and that property owners are paying their fare of the school district's budgets and funds. So not only do they study our values, they also study our procedures. We just finished a MAPS called a Methods and Assistance Program. I really don't understand that terminology because they come in and they study they study our finances, our budgets, our board of directors meetings and agendas that they were properly posted. They study our manuals, our appraisal manuals. They make sure that we're accepting the protests timely. We're closing them out. If you go to the appraisal review board, that orders were issued. They study all this, and it's a week-long process that we go through with them after we've already submitted tons of data ahead of time, and then they come in and get some additional data. So they do study us. So appealing the market value. File a completed signed protest form by the deadline. Okay? The deadline is May 15th. Okay? File your protest. Documents that help with the protest include fee appraisals, and if you have photographs that are stamped with a time on them, those are good. Show us the interior. What is the condition? You're saying there's a problem. Show us what that problem is. And the reason we ask for time stamped is because we have been fooled. Okay? I've been through a protest where the property owner brought me in a totally infested, termite-infested home. I'm sitting there going, how is anybody living here? Well, the board at the appraisal review board ordered that we had to do an inspection. And when we did an inspection, there was no termite damage at all. It was completely finished out very nice. So, but we believe that most of the people that are submitting their information are honest. But we just ask that if you timestamp that, that sure does help. And it gives us an idea of what's going on. So, sales are good information too. The next thing that's going to be up is questions for you guys to go to the podium and start asking questions. But I gave you a little sample of this year's a notice, just to show you that when you find, I know it's kind of small, I apologize, but where it says the total market value, you can see, I'm sorry, I have to switch glasses. All right, you can see where the total market value went from 360 to 432. It was more than a 10% increase. And this property owner was concerned because his value went up more than 10%. Well, as I said before, market is not limited. But what's limited is if you go down to his appraised value where it says 360 to 403,569, that increase is a 10% plus there's a $7,569 value of a structure that was not previously on the tax roll. So he had his 10% plus the new structure. And something that is also confusing. as a new property owner, you don't get the old property owner's appraised value and limitation. That was that property owner's. When you buy a property, it starts all over, okay? So that's often misunderstood, and people are really upset when they get their tax bill in 22. They thought that they had a limitation, and they didn't, because it started all over. So, if anybody'd like to go up to ask a question, please, if you get the mic, I'd appreciate it.
Hello.
Hello.
Can you hear me? Is that okay? Good. Okay, my name is Chris Winter. I live on Northeast 7th Street here in Steelville. Bought my house in 2010. I also have a business on Highway 71 Allen Creek on a 5+ acre lot over there. And one thing that I wanted to cover is you were talking about protesting and that there's a review board. My last recollection of protesting taxation probably goes back about 5 or 6 years ago. But my experience was I went down to I had to make the appointment, file for the protest, make the appointment in advance, show up at the date and time, wait until whoever it was that I was meeting with was ready, and then went into his office. Now, my impression was that the gentleman that I talked to was actually the appraiser that appraised that property on it. And when I sat down, first of all, I mean, they were none too friendly to me, nor was anybody in there. From the gal at the reception desk. But that's neither here nor there. I walked into his office and it was just littered with stacks and files and things like that. And I said, I'm here to contest my appraisal value. Now I had all my comps and everything else. I worked as a real estate agent for many years and also did bank appraisal opinions for lenders, which is like a mini appraisal. You go through the same type of thing, somebody knows what that is. So I had my homework done, and basically, when I said that I'm here to contest that, someone said, okay, well, prove it. Why is it that you think that your property is overvalued? And I said, my understanding is it doesn't work that way. What I'd like to do is I'd like to see your proof. You're the one that came up with the valuation. Show me your comps. Show me what you did and how you got there. Because it doesn't seem like, I got a big huff and a puff, and I was told that, that information isn't here, whatever. I'd have to go and find it. We'd have to pull it and all this kind of stuff. And I said, that's fine. I'll wait. And man, that didn't go over well. Anyhow, to get to the bottom of it, it took probably about 2 hours of me waiting there, and then going through rooms and taking me to rooms with more stacks of things and going, well, see, we have to go through these in order to get your comps. So I think if I'd have been steamrolled from the beginning and not, stood up for myself on that, I wouldn't have had a leg to stand on. As it was, I ended up winning that valuation and got it rolled back because it made sense. So that was my last experience. I haven't fought one since, mainly because my opinion has been that our market is growing. It's growing so fast that it's kind of a coin toss. Even if I went in there prepared, you might not win because if you don't think that your property has been overvalued by the appraisal district, then it probably hasn't, right? It probably hasn't. So if you go in there just trying to flip a coin, you're wasting your time. But I haven't been back there since, but my experience was not like going to a review board that was ready to meet me prepared at all. It was a horrible experience. Anyhow, fast forwarding to recently, we took the property that I bought recently. I bought it back in last May, and had to have it surveyed and appraised. Okay, we already had the county appraisal that came in. County appraisal came in at $290,000 for this 5 acres. Right? The bank appraisal came in at $178,000. My question is, how do you miss that far? How do you miss about $100,000 on a property that the bank values? I've got all my title work here, values at $178,000. and the county's got me at 292. So in this instance, do I go in and do the same thing, make an appointment to the review board, bring my appraisal, and then what do they go on?
Let me address that. Let me address that for you, okay?
Yeah.
All right, so first of all, I apologize that you even had that type of an experience because that's not an experience that is allowed in our appraisal district.
Anybody else out there?
Well, I'm hoping you're not having those experiences now. If you're having those experiences now, there's a process. You can file a complaint. We have a taxpayer liaison officer that can take those complaints that we know of. But here's the deal, sir. Here's the deal. File your protest. Yes, ask for your evidence. We will submit it. But the thing that you have is that you have a great piece of evidence ahead of time. Now, here's the thing. I'm a certified general appraiser. You understand what that means. I'm licensed with the state of Texas, which means I have access and can have access to every single sale in the state. But I can't because I work for the appraisal district. And because I work for the appraisal district, what's the problem with sales? Texas is a non-disclosed state. We get every sale that we possibly can to do our values. The thing with your bank appraisal, that person had access to more data than we did. And so that's the reason it can possibly be off that much. But you bring that information in, what happens is we gain additional sales that we can use in the analysis of additional protests in that area to support that. And it'll be taken into consideration. What was the purpose for the appraisal? You know, we take all those.
We're changing title.
Yeah, so we take all that into consideration.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So it was a current appraisal. And you know, the other problem that I had when I went in and fought, like I said, it was a process that took most of the afternoon and it was very, very uncomfortable and ugly. But like I said, I did get my valuation that I was going to. I thought that was it. I went through there, said very good, all right, no hard feelings, shook our hands, left there, and then I got a bill for the old valuation, as though it meant nothing, as though nothing at all was covered. When I went back to say, hey, wait a minute, this isn't what we came up with. I spent all that time in here and everything else, and they said, okay, they looked in the file and they said, well, we don't have a signed acknowledgement of settlement paper. I said, what is that? They said, well, that's you acknowledging that you accept our
Reduction.
yeah, and I said, was that something I was told to sign or supposed to sign? Well, yeah, you should have. Well, if I walk out of that office and nobody says, hold on, before you go, there's one important paper that solidifies this. I felt like I got totally, bushwhacked.
Well, I can tell you that from what you're describing that occurred 5-6 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
okay, that's not the process now. Okay?
That's what I want to be clear.
Now, if you come in for an informal hearing, we like to have an informal hearing first before you go to a formal. Okay? You're in fact, the law changed that informals are required now. So you have an informal hearing where you get to sit down one-on-one with the appraiser and discuss the property. If they have a settlement to offer, you sign it right then. And most of those hearings should only take about 20 to 25 minutes. Okay? I can't attest to what happened in the past. I was not working with the appraisal district then.
That's fair
Okay?
enough.
So this is what our rules. This is what's supposed to be in place now. So if you're not satisfied with that, and you say, no, I don't agree with that, I don't agree with that value, I want to go before the board, then you will receive a notification by mail as to when that hearing date is. They're not at the same date.
Okay.
At that time, the appraisal review board, this is what's supposed to happen. The property owner is supposed to present their case, the appraisal district presents their case, and the appraisal review board weighs the evidence. Okay? That's what's supposed to happen, and they're supposed to render their decision. Okay? So, and just know that if anyone is not satisfied, it can't be about value. But if you're not satisfied with the service that you have received, there is a process. It's on our website. There's a process for you to go through. That's how we know what we need to do, okay? Yes?
And, you know, I mean, we're all human, and I know that during that time, everybody's in there protesting, and you know, it can be tense. So, you know, I understand, but yeah, that whole thing that I went through from start to finish was just very unpleasant. So, I'm glad. Hopefully, that helps people in here that didn't know what to expect going in, and have never, you know, protested their values before. But yeah, you have rights, and you have expectations that should be met.
Yeah. Well, I thank you very much for that. And I, from what we are experiencing in our office, I would say that potentially 85 to 90% of the people that come in have had it might not be the experience they wanted, in that they might not have got the value they wanted, but it is a policy that everyone is to be treated like a human being, one. And that each of you, we often say to our appraisers, after 2 weeks of holding informals, we held 7,000 protests last year with 5 appraisers, okay? After 2 weeks of saying the same thing over and over again, they feel like they're a broken record, and I tell them over and over again, it doesn't matter. The person that's sitting in front of you has not heard the process. They have not heard the sales. They have not heard it. You have got to treat each person that you meet with as an individual, separate person. So, anyway, thank you. Yes, Mrs. Yes.
Okay, can y'all hear me? My name's, hello? Okay. Okay, no? Okay, I can
You
talk
should talk like right into the top
right
of it.
into it.
The top.
The top.
On top of it, like this.
Top of it.
Like you're singing.
Okay, hi everybody, I'm Janice Bruno, and I have property in Smithville, and I've purchased another property. I'm going to tell you about a good experience. It was 3 years ago on a property that I purchased and did protest with timestamp photos, and I want to say one of the young ladies that's sitting at the desk here helped out with that particular protest, and so I actually had a positive experience, and it probably took about an hour. It wasn't a 20-minute protest. But if you go in there and you have all your photos and you've got your paperwork, you come prepared, it seemed to go pretty smooth. But my question to you is, what is the time frame now? Let's say somebody in the audience is going to apply for a homestead. What can they expect for a turnaround on a homestead exemption?
Okay, so we have 30 days to act to request additional information or deny.
Okay, so that's a 30-day.
To deny or request additional information. So we don't send out acceptance letters. We only send out denial letters or requests for additional information. So if you've not received a letter requesting additional information from 30 days of application or a denial letter, then it's in the process of being entered and entered into the system.
Okay,
Doesn't start until next calendar year.
is that
No.
Is that true then of the disability application and the over 65 application?
All applications.
All applications are 30 days. If you don't hear back, that means it's in the process of being approved, unless you get a denial letter.
Unless you get a denial letter. And denial letters are sent by certified mail.
And
So-
another question for you, Fawn. You guys are having to do all these protests, and you said you did over 7,000 protests. And how many on your staff right now that work in the district?
Well, at that, last year I think we were at a total of 19 employees, and we have finally been able to fully staff and hire on, and we're now at 26 employees now.
Okay.
We've been budgeted for 26 employees for quite a while. So on our appraisal staff, we've gone from 5, and I tell you what, that appraisal staff is so excited. When we told one of the lead appraisers that we have 7 or 8. Anyway, 7 or 8 that are going to be holding hearings. I mean, he was ecstatic because it's just like, oh my gosh, it's not such a load. So
That's positive. So
It
you
is
got-
positive.
You got a full staff.
we
Okay,
have full
thank
staff.
you.
Yes. Thank you.
Hi. I have a hard time talking in public, so bear with me if I get emotional. Last year, my dad has 5 properties in Smithville, and I have 1, and I disputed all but one of my dad's properties and my own last year, and I won them all. It can be done. And it was a beautiful, pleasant experience. I worked with 2 different of your people, one for my own, one for my dad's. So I want to say thank you for that. I'm going to be disputing again this year. I have a couple of specific questions. My dad owns a mobile home park, and on the appraisal it says that he has 13 spots, but he only has 11. Is just taking the timestamp pictures going to be enough to prove that those 2 spots are not spots anymore? One that burned down, and the city wants $5,000 for us to put a new underground
Water.
electric
All that stuff.
outlet, and my dad's like not going to do it. So
Just comment that, and if you have something from the city stating that, include that. That's
Okay.
That
Okay.
you can, yes.
And then for y'all, take pictures of everything that's wrong with your house. Don't be too proud to say my whatever's wrong is wrong, because they're not going to tell anybody else what goes on in that office. So that's my advice. Good luck.
Thank you very much. Thank
They
you.
were wonderful to me, all of them.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Hello,
Hi.
my name is John Sable. I live out on Highway 153, just north of Smithville. And I've been fighting y'all for like 30 years. And, sometimes I win, sometimes I lose, but I even feel it, I enjoy it sometimes because it's a challenge. And I have a lot of respect for the ladies up front because I've dealt with you, and I think maybe you recognize me. I know Crystal and I've gone head to head several times. And same thing, sometimes I win, sometimes they lose. But typically, I always go to the ARV. And if you're confident in your facts, I think that's what you should do. Now, yesterday, I had a new experience, which to me was kind of troubling, is that I went into the appraisal district, and in the past, I just handed off my protest form to the lady up front. She stamped it, made a copy, gave it back to me, and I expected that I would come back for an informal hearing. But now apparently the process has changed, where I went to the back, and there was another lady that sort of was screening the protest forms, and she said that she would not accept my form because it wasn't a legal protest. And the issue revolves around the fact that I have a farm, and I've had a ag exemption as long as I've lived out there. And, I do agricultural things, so I don't mind if the appraisal district sent me a new application to fill out and review, but her argument was that because I have a special use evaluation, that my protest wasn't legitimate. But my argument was that on my notice of value, that it did not include the special use evaluation. So in the past, I'm worried because, that usually indicates what you're going to pay in taxes, and that really bothers me. Now, I understand, statutorily, you have to send me a certified letter that you denied that exemption, but at the same time, it kind of bothers me that I feel like I'm giving up my right to protest, and also I don't think it was correct for that person not to accept my protest form.
Okay. First of all, I apologize that you had an experience that was not good and not pleasant.
Well, it's
And-
not that, I just wonder if that was legal,
No, we need to figure out what was going on, because yes, your notice does not have the ag exemption on it, or the ag notification on there, so you were wanting to protest ag.
Right, I
Right.
wasn't notified, and then, I wasn't
Yeah,
doing that.
and you hadn't received your denial letter yet. What we ask is for individuals to wait for the denial because you have 30 days to file, because even if you file and then we grant, we still have to hear that hearing because you filed the protest.
Well, in my case, I'm a little bit nervous because I do have a plan to go on vacation in May. And, I'm worried, that's gonna compound things because I'm gonna be gone for about a month.
Okay.
And I just felt like I'm giving up my chance to protest if I don't get my form in by
Your
the
form in.
deadline.
Exactly. So, what I would like is, when we're done here, if you would have a conversation with Leslie here, she oversees, the protest process, and we'll see what, we can do for you on that.
Thank you.
Okay. And yes, sir, we have had, many of conversations, and we sometimes say to others, when we send out our notices, we're actually sending out an invitation because we don't get to see very many people in our government office. Nobody ever comes to see us. And this is our opportunity. And we have regulars, and we love seeing them. It's fun. We have great conversations on catching up. And it's not, but we don't intentionally do that because, but anyway, some of them think that it's, we love to visit with you. Yes?
So is his exemption canceled?
No.
Oh, okay, I misunderstood that.
Yes, sir.
I just had one simple question when I went before, and that was, where can I get the material that you did? In other words, you formed an opinion,
Okay.
your appraiser formed an opinion. Where do I have access to that same material so that I can dispute that opinion?
Okay, when you file your protest, you can request that information. We are not allowed to give out any of the sales information because Texas is a non-disclosed state without a formal protest filed.
When you say that information, what will I get?
Well, if you indicate that you wish to have the supporting documentation, it could be a comparable grid that shows you properties that have sold in your area. It depends on what you specifically ask for. So, I mean,
The information last year, we were told, or I was told, and I'm sure others, is that we didn't have access to any of that material, that we had to go in the community, find our own properties that had sold. And my question is that not true?
okay, so the information the appraisal district can provide is the sales that, the information that we use. So like when we develop a comparable grid, it might contain anywhere from 5 to 7 properties that have sold. That's the information that we provide. If you're looking for any additional supporting information that supports your claim that we have overvalued you, then yes, you need to contact a real estate agent or someone in the community for additional information. I know that there's been several agents that have provided market analysis sheets, if you know what those are, that they just give us a listing of, well, here's all these sales that sold in that area. They don't really give us a value, but they just give us a list of sales. And then we take all that information and plug it into our system to see if that benefits you.
So we just have to have nice real estate agents out there.
Well, yeah, I apologize, but we can provide you with the information on our comp grids, but any additional that's beyond that we don't know of, we wouldn't be able to provide you.
I just
If
didn't
he
know.
files a formal, request for a formal hearing, he will be given that that you've used it.
He has to request it. If you don't request it, we don't have to provide it. Yes, ma'am. Hi.
I have a question that's kind of related to his. Where do you get your comparables from? Because when I protested several years ago, they said they got them from anywhere in Bastrop County. So I have a house in Smithville, but my house was compared to a house in Bastrop or Elgin or Cedar Creek or someplace else. Is that still true?
Your property should not have been compared to anything other than what it was in Smithville, depending on what your property is.
This is the regular house in
Okay,
Smithville. This is
so,
what's happening.
So like if you're one of the old Victorians in Smithville, you're going to be compared to the old Victorians in Bastrop and Elgin, okay? Because those are not unique and they don't sell unique, okay? They sell unique. They don't sell like the regular market. But if your property is in Smithville, the comparable sales are in Smithville. Now, okay.
That's why I'm asking if it's still.
All right, now when we get to the rural property, let's talk about that real quick. If I'm 100-acre tract with the house on it, there's probably not a lot of 100-acre tracts in your area that's sold with the house on it. And any fee appraiser is going to go outside, just right there next door, to find that sale. They're gonna go within the county. They're actually gonna go into Lee County, Fayette County, and Caldwell County to find sales to appraise your property. Because 100 acres with a house is not common.
Okay, back up the land value and go with,
We
the
can't,
money.
market says market value, it says,
Right,
yeah.
but if market value is $10,000 an acre, okay, you got that 99 acres of that to get your home value and then put that in.
we do that, but we also have to provide a comparable sales in our evidence that has a house with 100 acres on it. It's part of it, or similar, but I'm sorry.
So we don't have to file a freedom of information act to find out what houses you're using to compare to my house.
You can,
Correct?
what we would recommend you do for your informal, since it's informal, is that when you come to your informal hearing, we're going to give you the information that was used. Now, for you to make a request before your informal hearing, we're unable to provide that information because the only request for evidence is at an ARB hearing, a formal hearing, okay? But an informal hearing, you can take that information, and we don't have to make a decision right then. We would like to, but if you would like to take a look at it, sometimes the appraisers give a day, a week, for you to take a look at that and have an additional conversation, but we can't have back and forth conversations and a conversation for 3 months, okay? So, but yes, but we do want to do what we can.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Hello, I'm Jenny.
Hi, Jenny.
Concerning the over 65 city tax freeze, I'm always getting questions about it. The 2021 is the year I think that the city made the decision that they were going to freeze. And then 2022 has passed, and now the taxes were paid now is 2023? Or we're doing 2022 taxes?
21, they approved a value, a dollar amount. 22, they approved to freeze. So it's 22 and 23 will be used to determine what the freeze amount will be.
And then additionally, they asked, do they have to do anything extra if they already have over 65 exemption? It's
No.
automatic.
If they already qualified for an over 65 and have it, they're
So in 2022 and 2023, we're paying the city tax as it's,
as it's calculated.
as it's calculated. And then 2024, we'll pay the lower of the two in our city freeze from then on.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Then the other thing I wanted to ask is when you talk about when you have a homestead exemption, you can't, you don't raise our cost more than 10%,
The appraised value.
the place value more than 10%. But that's for that year.
Correct.
And then if the market value doesn't lower, you're going to pay the next 10%. You're going to pay another 10%.
Yes.
So over 10 years, you're going to be paying 100% of that value, unless it's going up or down.
You are going to be, you will continue to receive a 10% increase until you catch up to market.
Okay. So it's worth protesting if your house is valued. It's not, don't let's just slip by and say, oh, it's only 10%. Is that's kind of what happens. A fella had a huge, I work with the seniors here in Smithville, so they had a huge increase. And they said, the appraiser said, oh, it's only going to affect you 10%. And he's going, excuse me, it's going to be 20% next year, 30% the next year. So
Yes.
anyway.
Yes, we do want to get the market correct. That is correct.
All right, now I noticed that they have openings for board members. What does that mean?
Okay, we have 2 vacancies for the appraisal review board. And that is, you can make an application. It's on our website that you can make application. You need to be willing to serve. You would sit as a board and you would hear the hearings. Any protest between the property owner and the appraisal district, that person sits with the board. There's a 7-member board. They would sit with that board. We are going to work on breaking that board into panels so that we can get through our hearing So we'll have 2 panels that we're gonna run this year, once we get enough in. But that's what an appraisal review board member, the opening is.
Is that a
But it's-
paid position?
It is a paid position. So yes, quite often, the individuals that are sitting up there hearing these hearings, they'll say, well, I'm a volunteer, and I'm sitting over there going, you're paid. Don't tell the property owner you're a volunteer. Yes, you are a volunteer, but you're paid. Right now, it's $150 a day is what you get paid. But you're there from 8 o'clock until whenever we get done with that docket. So if it's at 6 or 7 or 8 o'clock at night, there have been some really wonderful years where the appraisal review board has only had 2 or 3 hearings a day. And then there was last year that they were booked solid. Okay. So, and it works best if you're in a position that you can devote that time, and it's during the summer. Okay. And we do want board members. We do need them.
Okay,
The appraisal review board.
So who's got to vote, or how does that work?
Yes. Majority rules. Yes, ma'am.
okay, finally, on our new forms that we've received, why does it not state what our tax due is?
Because we do not calculate taxes, and they took that off the form 2 years ago by legislation, or 4 years ago. 4 years ago, they said that that was not to be printed on the appraisal notices. It was on there last year. We took it off this year because the law says it doesn't need to be there, and you cannot protest your taxes. Everybody's protesting taxes. You can protest value. Now, there is a place that you can find that information.
Online.
It's online on our website. You can pull up your account number and you can go to tax information and it's right there. Okay? So we're not hiding it from you. Huh?
What's the website?
BastropCAD.org. BastropCAD.org. You're welcome.
Andy, what were you?
I was going to say I had a great experience with Crystal.
She's one of our favorites.
She was very helpful, and yeah.
And she's also a local, Janechka, if you know that name. Right? Okay. So I've got another one coming to mind. And while he gets over there, he's already left. I did see one of a commercial property owner that was here before. Anybody that owns a commercial property, that valuation is based on the income approach. It's not based on the income, the business. It's based on what the building's potential to rent at. Okay? So just for clarification.
How do you put that on your, how do you put that on the objection? Where do you put that?
On a commercial, you just write that on a rental house, just write on there what you're renting it for in the comments.
Okay, so that helps change your valuation?
It possibly could, yes, sir.
It's still a market value.
Yeah, it's still a market value appeal, but we'll take that into consideration because we also study
Yeah, we're
rentals.
losing customers in the Smithville area, nobody knows about it except me, because I have them rented, and they're leaving.
Yes, sir.
My name is Gene Evans. I live out on 153, about 30 acres. I've got a house out there.
Yes, sir.
And we had a wonderful weekend when we received our proposal.
Okay.
And my ag was not on that.
Okay.
And it really was quite upsetting that ag valuation was not approved on it. We had turned in our approval, our application for that. And when we went Monday, we were told that our property had not yet been investigated. So that's why it wasn't on my taxes.
Yeah, it depends on when you turned in your application. And if you turned in we had to have these to the print file March 31st to the printer to print them to mail by the 14th of April. So if you didn't have your application in there and we have 30 days to act on it, it wasn't going to be on your notice, sir. I saw it.
It was a wonderful weekend.
Okay. I'm glad you had a wonderful weekend.
The other part of that is that we had purchased about 12 acres that added to our property right next door.
Okay.
And we were told it would be best not to combine those two. This was about 5 or 10 years ago. we disagreed at the time, but they convinced us not to do that, simply because we are ag. But if you divide those two properties against each other, they don't, both properties complement each other, but they are separate, they may be a jeopardy.
All right, so as a property owner,
Yeah.
the law states that if you want those two tracts combined, you just come into the office and say you want those two tracts combined.
Okay.
Now, when applying for ag on your application, if the other piece is used in conjunction with it, you listed, you apply for both.
Correct. And we put that information on there, but
Okay.
we just feel extremely insecure that, we're going to be kicked off the ag rules simply because they're separate, they complement each other. And when we have cattle running on the property as a group of about probably 9 owners with one person doing, the work really. So, it's very disturbing that we could really be pushed off the property. And this property's been ag for 100 years. It was been delivered
Right.
from original
And so-
land grant.
So here's what we want to talk about ag. A lot of people come into our office and say, it's been ag for 100 years, okay? But we're not saying that it's not ag. We're just saying it doesn't meet the qualifications to get a special reduction in value. You have to meet the guidelines. You have to meet the guidelines that are published.
Why did it meet those requirements 7 years ago now?
We look at those requirements every year. We have an ag advisory board that sits and reviews our guidelines, and all of them are farm people. They're ranchers, they're farm people, they're hay producers, and there's even wildlife that sits on that board.
Did the rules change
No.
those last 7 years?
The rules have been the same in that it requires so many acres to support an animal unit. And we all know that. If you're a farmer rancher, you know how many acres it's going to take to support a 1,000-pound animal.
Right.
And if we're abusing that land, we're not being a prudent manager, and that doesn't qualify.
There's more land in the last 4 years than there's ever been cleared on that property.
And I'm not saying that yours doesn't qualify. I'm just saying that when this is what we want to respond to individuals. We're not saying that you don't have cattle out there. We're just saying that it might not qualify for the requirements. Okay, 10 acres with 7 head of animal, 7 1,000-pound animals. Are you going to do that? Any of my ranchers out here? No, that is not a prudent manager, and that doesn't deserve ag. So that's what we're looking
group
at.
of about 8 or 9 people with some of the land that is cleared, and they do use it, cattle do come on the property.
We have to look at the primary use of the land. When you're talking about, are you talking about 8 individual owners
Eight
that
individual
can?
different owners of different pieces of property that we gather together, that we can roam around these, 20 head of cattle and provide that rancher.
All you can do is make applications, sir, and we can see if it does qualify. Okay?
And at this point right now, I still have ag, so I could go wildlife.
If you have ag,
I have
and you
ag.
have a qualified ag, you can apply for wildlife, but you still have to go through the qualification process.
Correct.
Yes. And most of our
There's
wildlife,
companies out there that do that for you, right?
yes, there is a group, Plateau Land Management does that, but I'll let you know, we have a lot of people that are in wildlife that are going back to getting cattle on.
And what's the reason for that?
It's too much work. You have to maintain that plan every year. You have to do your brush piles. If you're doing a stand of count, that you're gonna count the blue jays or the bluebirds, you gotta provide the documents and the game cans and all that stuff. The deer, the feeders. And it's so much work. Some of the wildlife people are getting out and going right back to cattle. Rachel?
Just to ease your mind on your original question, if you are denied, which you have not been yet, because you haven't received that certified letter, if you are, you have 30 days to protest that denial.
Should I go ahead and protest?
No, you need to wait for because you might not be denied at all. It might be accepted, so then.
But that gives me more time.
No.
Why wouldn't I?
Because we have to act on your original protest, not the protest of the denial. You have more time to wait for your denial if you get denied. We don't even know if you're denied yet. So if you protest now, you're protesting something that you don't.
When can we get that information?
Well, you made your application, we have 30 days to make a decision as to whether we want additional information or we send you a denial.
We applied 45 days ago.
No,
Just a guess.
We entered them into the system in date order.
Yeah.
If she told you Monday that it was waiting for an inspection, we have a person in the field every day going out and doing these inspections. If you also stated that you're using it with a group of properties,
Yes.
we will gather the applications on the group of properties so that we do one inspection.
yes.
So it could be
Well, then-
different reasons, but that letter will be mailed certified. It will be your responsibility to sign for it because we receive a lot of the certified mail data.
Two of the people have gotten their ad according to them.
And it could be,
So why hasn't mine been approved if it's in a group of people?
Well, it's a
I'm
process.
sure you spoke with Marilyn about that on Monday. I'm guessing you probably heard that you said you came in Monday and checked the process.
Yes.
And that it was out for inspection, or?
She looked on the computer and she said that it's not been determined at this point.
Okay. So it is a process. We receive thousands of applications, and it will be handled. And if you got a date stamp, right, that you turned it in timely.
Correct.
So you're going to receive a response from our office, okay? If it was denied or if we want additional information. If you didn't get that information, it's possibly that it has been approved. It's just going to take us a little bit to get it into the computer system.
Okay, how often is that updated? Is it updated every week? Or
It's updated as we can get them entered, sir. And this week is the deadline week. So are we entering any ads? No. We're at the counter all day long handling applications that are coming in. So the thing is that we want to get that taken care of before your tax bill, right?
Yeah.
In the computer system. Right. But your denial letter and all that information should be, I'm not saying you were denied. If you were to be denied, you should receive that certified mail.
Okay, if it is denied, can I at that point go wildlife
Can you change his use?
after I protest?
Well, you're gonna, do you have a plan in place?
Do you have a wildlife management plan?
I've contacted those folks just for
Right.
security.
When you make application for wildlife, you must have a plan in place.
They
So-
said that they could produce that in that time frame.
Right, and then you have to look at the time frame and whether or not it happens before July the 19th. Because you can't file after the board approves the records. But if you are in a group of people and you're saying, and if everybody filled out their application correctly, because I'm here to tell you.
Well, the letter made everybody frantic because it didn't have address.
Right, but that's a notice for your value, your market value.
Well, why was my homeowners, my home exemption on there and my over 65 was on there?
We asked you to refile, sir, and when we ask you to refile for your application, your ag is removed for the notice. And we're allowed to ask for you to refile. So it's not on the notice. Because we have to be able to grant. So your application was not in time for us to process it in order to get it onto your notice. So I think we've answered that question, I believe, for you. So if you have any additional concerns, though, please feel free after this is wrapped up to come up and have a conversation. Okay?
We just have one more, because out of respect for everybody's time, it's past
Okay, I'll try to be quick. So if my property value is set January 1st, and by March it has decreased in property value, and I can prove property sales have decreased by 17%, can I bring that to the protest and have my market value decreased?
You can provide that information. I'm not going to tell you what it will do, but you can provide that information. Yes, ma'am. What's amazing is that when we present sales from January to March at the appraisal review board, they kick every one of them out.
Because, I mean, it's already property values have dropped. And
Yeah,
that's-
but that's the key. The valuation date is January 1. So January 1, it's not March 1.
So we're paying 22 values?
Pardon?
So in 23, we're paying 22 values?
You're in 20, on January 1 of 23, you're paying on what occurred during 2022. And in the first 6 months of 2022, the market did not take a turn. It went higher and higher. And then it took a turn from June to December. When we did our analysis for this year, we did not look at any sales from January through June of 2022. We did not look at those sales, although the law says that we can. We felt that since the market took a turn in June or July of 2022, we would only look at July 22 through the end of the year.
Okay, let's give Fawn a round of applause.
This was good.
We could do another hot topic on this, because I'm sure when you go back and you look at your paperwork and really figure out everything that she was explained tonight, there's going to be more questions. So we will invite her back, and this was a great crowd tonight. We had over 36 folks. I really appreciate y'all coming out for the hot topic huddle and for the girls that came tonight. Thank you.
I need to introduce my staff too. I have Crystal Janechka. She's my appraisal supervisor. She oversees all the appraisers. And then I have Leslie Mueller. She's my deputy chief of administration. And I really depend on these ladies to get us through. I do have some business cards up here if you want to take my business card. It does have my email address on that. I will do my best to answer an email from you. Just give me a few days to respond. But anyway, I will not answer anything about protests, though, because if you want to protest, you need to do the right thing at protest. But if you have any questions about what we discussed here, we'd be happy to have a conversation with you. So if that wraps it up, if you'd like to come up and have some additional conversation, we're here to hear about it.